The Logba people live in the Volta region of Ghana, east of the Volta Lake in the mountains of the Ghana-Togo borderland. Most Logba towns and villages are situated along the trunk road from Accra to Hoho. They include the following settlements: Wuinta, Akusame, Adavni, Andokfe, Adzako, Alapeti, Klikpo, and Tota. Tota is located high in the Ghana-Togo mountains to the east of the Accra-Hoho road. Alapeti is the commercial center of Logba, while Klikpo is traditionally the seat of the head of the Logba people. The Logba people are primarily subsistence farmers, producing cassava, maize, yams and forest fruits, supplemented by cash crops like cocoa, coffee and sawn mahogany logs. The Logba area is known for its scenery, which includes waterfalls, cliffs, and limestone formations, including one or two known small caves with minor speleothems. Logba is a Kwa language spoken in the southeastern Ghana by approximately 7,500 people. The Logba people call themselves and their language Ikpana, which means, defenders of truth. Logba is different from Lukpa of Togo and Benin, which is also sometimes referred to as Logba. Alakpa is a name of one of the hills in Logba. Etsi means ground under. Alapeti thus refers to Alakpa Hills. It is one of the low-lying settlements which has now become a center for commercial activity. Recordings made as part of this research provide documentation of this knowledge for future use by members of the community. Map 2 Logba and surrounding towns, Dorblo 2008, Lexical borrowing. Borrowing is a natural process among the world's languages, and occurs quite frequently when speakers of different languages come into extended contact with each other. The term is used to refer to the process whereby foreign lexical items, words or phrases, are used by speakers of one language either to refer to completely new concepts or objects which never had their own term in the language, or to replace lexical items which already existed in the language. When foreign terms are used to refer to completely new concepts, such as computers or the internet, the borrowing does not necessarily encroach on the language, although speakers of some languages make a point of always coining new terms for these things. For example, taking the word for spider web in their language and using it to refer to the internet. However, when the foreign terms replace terms which already existed in the language, such as when the English greeting, morning, is used by you speakers despite the previous existence of situations whereby you speakers greeted each other prior to noon, this borrowing constitutes a loss of knowledge among the community. This is especially true of languages, such as Ikpana, which are primarily oral, i.e. are rarely or never written. Language versus dialect. Since the majority of the pressure put on Ikpana comes from the surrounding, dominant language, it is important to note that the two languages are related. See discussion below on classification of Ikpana. Ikpana is not, however, a dialect of as many people I spoke with in the Volta region mistakenly believed. Linguists distinguish between languages and dialects based on a definition of mutual intelligibility. That is, if a person who speaks language A can understand a person speaking language B and vice versa, then A and B are said to be mutually intelligible, and are in fact dialects of the same language. However, if a speaker of language A cannot understand a speaker of language C and neither can that speaker understand the first, then A and C are said to be mutually unintelligible and are defined as separate language. The situation, however, is often not so simple, and nations may decide upon their own definitions to suit their political interests, either calling their language by a different name than the language of a neighboring political entity, despite mutual comprehensibility, or lumping a number of mutually incomprehensible languages all together under the label of a single language, with multiple dialects, to create a sense of national unity. Even following a strict linguistic definition is not always easy to do, as languages tend not to exist in clear-cut isolation. Rather, there may be something of a dialect continuum, with speakers of language A understanding speakers of language B, and speakers of language B understanding speakers of language C, but speakers of languages A and C not quite being able to understand each other. In this case, it might not be clear where to draw the line between language and dialect. In Ghana, while the individual languages may, for the most part, be officially recognized, to some degree, and in some contexts, as languages, among the general public there is a widespread misunderstanding of what is a language and what is a dialect. Especially in the Volta region, where Ikpana is spoken, a significant number of people I spoke with who were speakers of the region's majority language, told me they thought it was interesting that I was learning the dialect, when I mistook them for local Ikpana speakers and greeted them in Ikpana. Although I usually responded by saying that I was in fact really enjoying learning the language, since linguistically it is considered a separate, but distantly related, language from this did not seem to convince people. It may have been more effective to speak to them in this dialect, expecting them to understand, and then explaining from there that by linguistic definition, either they did not actually speak as they claimed, or Ikpana is not a dialect. I hope that in the future more of Ghana's population will understand and appreciate the great linguistic diversity which exists throughout its many regions, already used by a smaller linguistic group. Sometimes this process can be recorded as it is happening, such as when a borrowed term is the more common one and the original term is more obscure, possibly only known by the elders. In many cases, however, the process has already happened and there is no longer any trace of the original term, if it ever existed. Due to the pressures put on Ikpana by there has been significant sharing and borrowing of terms between and Ikpana. This project provides a snapshot of the current situation, before more of the original Ikpana terms slip into obscurity or disappear from memory entirely. Motivation for studying in Logba was ideal for this research project because the Akpanawo have an intimate knowledge of the surrounding plants and their uses, and the area is extremely lush with plant life. The project was spread between 3 of the Logba towns. Alapeti, called Abuda, meaning under the mountain, Klikpo, and Tota, called Iotu, meaning above Aya, which is the Ikpana name for Akusame, the town just north of Alapeti. Alapeti is considered the commercial center of Logba and is where I stayed. Between Alapeti and Tota is Klikpo, the capital of Logba. Located at the top of the mountain, 7 kilometers from Alapeti is the largest of the Logba towns, Tota. Between these 3 locations there is a great diversity of plants, as the changes in elevation create multiple biomes with a fair amount of variation in the plant life to be found there. There are plants, for instance, found at the top of the mountain in Tota which are not found in Alapeti.